I talked last time about how it's kind of interesting how this big tentacly monster, Cthulhu, has become like, really like cutesy, like plush stuffed animal stuff like that. You don't have that problem with Yog Sothoth. He's just freaking scary. Hey, what's up, bookworms and outer gods? Mike back again for some Fright Fest to talk a little more H.P. Lovecraft. And today we're diving into 1928's The Dunwich Horror. Written in 1928, published in 1929 by Weird Tales magazine. And I talked when I did my review recently for At the Mountains of Madness about how he had a hard time getting Weird Tales to publish that and eventually got picked up by someone else. Lovecraft himself said that this story was so messed up that he expected Weird Tales to balk at it. So I think it was kind of already, planting the seeds for how much he wasn't sure how far he could push the envelope. However, they loved it. They snapped it up at the time. It was the biggest payment he had ever gotten for one of his stories. And it, like I said, received his biggest advance. And I think that this is probably one of his most popular and most influential stories. I know John Carpenter and Neil Gaiman constantly list this story as influences for some of their other works. I can't tell you particularly which ones. I think In the Mouth of Madness, which obviously you think of At the Mountains of Madness. But he always lists Dunwich Horror as being part of the influence for that. Terrible, terrible movie. Don't watch it. And what else? With Neil Gaiman, I haven't read enough of him to know, but I know he did do a story called I, Cthulhu. So obviously, you can watch any documentary on H.P. Lovecraft and see that Neil Gaiman is a huge, huge fan, very influenced by his works. But what did I think about it? Well, we're going to talk about that here. I don't want to rehash all the same stuff. If you want to know how I got into Lovecraft, stuff like that, I've done a video about how I first discovered Lovecraft, and as well as in that At the Mountains of Madness video, I talked about a little bit more. So there's plenty out there for you to look up to see how I became a fan of this. I'm just going to start kicking this one off by talking about what is it about. And guys, The Dunwich Horror is the story of Wilbur Whately. Now, he is the son of a deformed albino mother and an unknown father. The strange events surrounding his birth and precocious development in the fictional town of Dunwich, Massachusetts is the focus. Wilbur matures at an abnormal rate, reaching manhood within a decade. All the while, he is indoctrinated with dark rituals and witchcraft by his grandfather. But when an unseen presence manifests itself within their farmhouse, it causes Wilbur to find the legendary Necronomicon and try and contain the Dunwich Horror. So, sounds pretty standard fare for a Lovecraft story, right? Big creepy monster, but this one you can't see. Let's go ahead and move into what makes it good or bad here, guys. I think what I've said in my Color Out of Space review is that what Lovecraft does the best is not just fear, but fear of the unknown. Now, at the Mountains of Madness, we kind of saw the big creepy monsters. This one, it's kind of, it leaves it up to you. It's kind of listed as unseen. So having something that you can't see, but knowing that it's evil or that something's not right and feeling like you have to kind of contain this evil spirit or force or manifestation, to me, that makes it a little more scarier because, again, what's scarier than seeing it? Not seeing the monster. When you don't see the monster, things always tend to be a little scarier. And I think that is kind of the focus of this story. While it's unseen, like I say, it continues to kind of build in size. So you start wondering, at what point are they not going to be able to contain this any longer? And that is the biggest fear of the story. But I think probably for me, the biggest one of this is the first mention of the lurker of the threshold, the opener of the way. This is Yog Sothoth, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning here. If you guys don't know, he is one of the outer gods. That's different than the older ones. The outer gods, they're more based around the solar system. They aren't confined to Earth, so they kind of can manipulate things that the old ones cannot. So this is the grandfather of Cthulhu, in case you need a little family tree there for you, a little tentacle leading down in this way. But I like this character because he has so many different powers than a lot of the more popular characters within his mythos. And I think that I don't want to list all those because some of them do play into the story, but he has so many different abilities that I think just make this, just continue to build this world in this mythos so much in this story. Yeah, more cosmic. So this is your first real taste of the characters that were kind of coming from outer space instead of, from being asleep before we were even here. I like that in this one, the Necronomicon, not this Necronomicon, but the actual Necronomicon of the story, I like that it actually feels like it's its own character in here. It's got so much like myth and lore about it, and you just I know it's been popularized by so many things, mainly Army of Darkness, I know, or Evil Dead. I know a lot of people know it really from there, but I really feel like it is a established character in this story. It's the first time it plays like a pivotal role in the storyline. And, you get mentions of Arkham, you get mentions of Miskatonic University. So I feel like this is the first one that's really just building this larger world that he's created. And I think it does it at the perils a little bit of some of the characters. I mentioned in the last video that, it was one of the first stories it felt like where, he actually has a named narrator. This one has named characters, and they play significant parts. But again, this story is 35 pages long. So if you're looking for deep and complex characters, and this is kind of where I'm moving into the bad here, if you're looking for deep characters with a lot of development, obviously you're not going to get it in a short story like this. I think that it really does kind of struggle with that, to where it doesn't make you care for very many characters. Obviously, you're interested in Wilbur, but you want to know more about who his father was. But I don't think that you're ever to a point to where you're fearing for any of these other characters in the story, or really carrying one way or the other. And that always is going to be a downfall on some of these shorter stories, because there's no time to develop these characters. You're just told, hey, you're supposed to be sympathetic with these characters for a long time. So there really isn't much time here to get invested in them. Like I said, I reread this, guys, in an afternoon. It's really not that long. I'm not going to mention his prose again. Every one of these stories tell you that his writing style is very, very tough for you to get into if you're not into stuff that's about 100 years old. It's going to be very difficult for you. And I'll say this one, the ending is kind of divisive amongst the Lovecraft community. And I really think it's because it's the first one that doesn't have just a sick, morbid, bad ending. I think that this is kind of one of the first ones where, maybe the good guys prevail, depending on how you look at it. I think that kind of threw some people off, because we're always, like I said, it usually ends in tentacles, and it doesn't usually end well for our human characters. And this is like one of those where maybe it does, So without completely ruining the ending for you there, and I didn't, trust me, there's so much more to the story than this. I think that it was fine. Like I said, if you want a horrific ending, I mean, he's written that story about 50 other times, so you don't have to look too far to find that. So, but like I said, this one is very divisive. I'm fine with it. It didn't really bother me at all. I didn't see the actual revelation at the end coming at all. So it was actually really, really surprising to me. But let's talk about why you should read it here. If you took a poll of the biggest Lovecraft fans, I say everyone who's read everything he's ever written, and you take a poll and you say, hey, give me your top 5 Lovecraft stories, and say you pulled 100 of these people, I think at least like 93 of them are going to have this story in their top 5. It is a legendary story by him. It is one of the most well recognized. It's one of the most adapted, both in radio and in movies and in TV. They've had all kinds of stuff for this. I think they even have a comic book. So they've had just about everything for this story. It's one of the ones that even if you haven't read Lovecraft, you kind of have heard the name Dunwich Horror before. So obviously it's very important. I think that this is one of those ones where, if you're first looking to get into some of his bigger universe connections, this is going to be the one that probably you should really dive into. Because while I feel like the story may be lacking a little bit as far as, the actual tale, this one feels like it's much more about the world building. And again, that's never a bad thing. I think it might struggle a little bit as a standalone story. And then I'm just kind of moving into my final thoughts here. Look, no one can make you as scared of something as HP could. I think that, again, the fear of the unknown is always something that's going to get to people. But to me, this one wouldn't be in my top 5. I think I liked his stories that rely upon dread for our main characters a little more than fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown, yes, he does it really, really great. I like being able to see the creatures. I like seeing the horrific things happening to these humans because I messed up, you guys. So one of those ones, with me at this age with horror, to me it is about dread. It's about seeing the bad thing that's going to happen and knowing that there ain't jack shit you can do to stop it. That's what kind of clicks with me with a lot of Lovecraft stuff. So this one, again, I feel like this one might have been a little more dependent on building his mythos, which I'm fine with. Is it mythos or mythos? I get told I say it wrong every time. I said mythos my whole life, and then I heard someone else call it mythos, and I'm like, have I been saying it wrong the whole time? And then I called it mythos in the last video, and somebody said it's mythos. Why are you saying it wrong? So you know what I mean, the Cthulhu mythos/mythos. Anyway, and like I said, guys, it's 35 pages. You can read it in an afternoon and make your own decision there. It's definitely a thumbs up for me. Don't misunderstand me. It's just it wouldn't be in my top 5. It might make my top 10. Like this is a writer. I love numerous stories from him, and I think that there is it's 90-10 really, really good stuff. So, something has to fill out the bottom third of that list, right? I wouldn't put it there. I'd say this is kind of middle of the pack for me. I enjoy it quite a bit. I think I enjoy The Color Out of Space. I enjoy Call of Cthulhu. I enjoy At the Mountains of Madness, Rats in the Walls, things like that. Much, much more than this. And maybe I'll do a top 5 sometime down the road. I don't know. Depends on how much you guys want to hear me talk about Lovecraft. So guys, have you read Dunwich Horror? I almost forgot which story I was covering here. Have you read it? What did you think about it? Did you scare you? Did you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that it relied a little bit more on fear of the unknown instead of dread? That kind of thing. Let me know in the comments, guys, and I will talk to you there.